the potential to add Jordan Seaton has become a game of internet where's Waldo. So I'm kind of out on it.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. I am here in my normal office. Where is Jordan Seaton? We don't know. We do not know. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for making it your first listen or your first view of the day. This is the number one sports podcast network out there. Thank you all so much, especially my everydayers, for helping make that the case. Oregon flips a 2026 running back. That makes plenty of sense when you dive into it, as I will. Some transfers that are flying under the radar, and trivia returns on a Tuesday. This episode brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. So, in the time span of 24 hours, Matt Moscona of Locked On LSU, who is very reliable, tweeted that Jordan Seaton was going to take his Oregon visit, that he'd canceled his Oregon visit, that he was taking his Oregon visit, that he wasn't going to take the visit. Look, I might be reading too much into this. I'll say that right off the bat. I've said before, Oregon brought in a transfer tackle in Michael Bennett. They've got two with sufficient experience to make me feel good about their starting potential. I'm never opposed to adding more talent or depth at any position for any particular reason if you can. And Seaton would 100% start if he wound up with the Ducks. Looks like he's going to wind up at LSU. I have a feeling that news has happened by the time you're listening to or watching this show. So I'm just at the point, look, come to Oregon, don't come to Oregon, but this back and forth, let's just get some clarity. And if you want to be somewhere else, that's fine. LSU is going to be a really good team with really high expectations, just like Oregon in 2026. There's not, a lack of solid reasoning for why you'd go to LSU. So anyway, I'm done talking about that until news actually arises on the matter. But actual news has come across my my desk here, and many of yours as well. DeAndre Robinson is indeed an Oregon Duck. Visited over the weekend, then committed not long after that. I mentioned this on yesterday's show, and he comes over from North Carolina, and this is the perfect type of fit. It is not easy to go and locate these sorts of guys that are being brought over to be depth pieces. But Oregon, it looks like, has done a good job of doing that so far. They brought over Simmons from UL Monroe, who's going to be in his fifth year of college football, 6'4", over 300 pounds. Now they've brought in DeAndre Robinson, 6'4", 315 pounds. I will say, for whatever it's worth, this is the sort of sicko stuff that I think about from time to time when prepping for segments. Terrence Green was, I believe, 6'5", and Tioni Gray was 6'6". Both these guys are 6'4". Sometimes an inch is the difference between batting a pass down and not batting it down. But do I think that this is some colossal downgrade? No. And I think Robinson is definitely more proven than Simmons is coming over from his previous stop. Robinson's a redshirt freshman, was a four-star composite in the 2024 class, number 262 overall, so not that far outside of the top 247, number 36 overall defensive lineman. In his redshirt year, I should say, he had a 56.5 PFF grade. This past year, though, 67.7, including a 71.5 in run defense and 62.2 in pass rush scenarios. I think that's particularly encouraging because I don't know how many times DeAndre Robinson will be on the field when Oregon wants to have interior guys to go get after the quarterback. That's what Bear Alexander and Amari Washington are for. That's not to say he'll never have to try and get pressure on the quarterback. It's just I feel like you use those interior guys most notably in expected run situations. But he certainly fits the body type. And he's got 2 years of college football in a weight room and in a defensive system. Of course, just played for Bill Belichick. And the other thing, too, why this in particular is a good fit, Simmons only had around 150 snaps this year. But Robinson, at a higher caliber school, was a part of a defensive line rotation that will look very similar to the one I expect Oregon to roll out in 2026. He had 377 snaps logged. That was actually the most of any of the 4 Tar Heels interior defensive linemen who had 330 or more. So they had 4 guys that rotated around like that. Oregon could be set right now on the interior of their defensive line. I think they could definitely add another one for sure. But Robinson's a native of Orlando, Florida, played with the Gators, by the way, in the 2024 season. So he went Florida after being a U.S. Army All-American Bowl participant in 2023 while he was still in high school. Went to Florida, went to North Carolina, now makes his way to Oregon. So there's a very real world where that rotation of 4 guys on the interior is set. And it could be that Simmons is the 5th guy who will absolutely see the field at some point in time, whether that's in a goal line set or if somebody gets injured or has to come out for a play or something like that. But you could be looking at Amari Washington, Bear Alexander, Aiden Breland, and DeAndre Robinson, and there's your 4. I think this is that type of move. So I think it makes a lot of sense that they bring in a guy like this. Again, if they brought in another, you lost Jericho Johnson, and you lost Terrence Green, and you lost Tioni Gray. Those guys were all kind of this body type and frame that played on the interior of the defensive line a hefty amount this year. Ashton Porter was a versatile guy that slid inside from time to time as well. So depending on how they feel about the true freshman class, and I don't know that you ever want to be in a spot where you rely on true freshmen. It's like the running back situation a year ago. You brought in Mekhi Hughes because okay, here's what we've got. And yeah, sure, we'll see if the true whoa, these guys are really good. These guys, sorry, yeah, they're better than Mekhi Hughes. That's the situation you want to be in. At frankly any position group. If you're looking at a highly rated true freshman and saying, well, he could see the field in his first year. Yeah, true freshmen have played every single year under Dan Lanning. That will be the case again when the 2026 season gets here in early September. But I think DeAndre Robinson makes a lot of sense. I definitely have higher expectations for him because he played at North Carolina, and he's got several years of eligibility left too. And the other guys did as well, right? The guys that left. Terrence Green could have been here for a couple more years. Tioni Gray, Jericho Johnson, they all had multiple years of eligibility left. So I think it's kind of just almost a one-to-one replacement of sorts for those guys that have left to go find places where they can probably play a little bit more. But yeah, if I had to wager a guess right now, I'd probably say Robinson logs somewhere between 200 and 300 snaps for the Ducks this year as the defensive line room currently sits. So leave your thoughts in the comments below. Hit me up on Twitter, however you want to get in touch. The move that I didn't see coming, but again, makes a lot of sense. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at Game Time. There's nothing like college football season. I miss it too. Tailgates, packed stadiums, being right there in the middle of it all. The energy, the bands, the moments that you remember forever, but actually getting tickets, that part used to be frustrating with long queues, logins, prices jumping at checkout. That is why Game Time gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to unlock amazing tickets and experiences in just a few taps, whether that's college football when it returns, college basketball, if you want to go to a game or a comedy show or anything else, Game Time has got you covered. I've used Game Time to go to college football games, to go to college basketball games, to go to comedy shows. I've got tickets on my phone right now for a show in Las Vegas in April. Why did I use Game Time? Because I save money. The process is really easy, and I know that it's going to be reliable. That's what you're looking for in a ticketing service. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, Create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. And you're listening to Locked On Ducks. Thank you for making it your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you haven't already, go check out our new Everydayer Club. You get access to an ad-free audio feed for Locked On Ducks, compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast app. Plus, you get access to the audio version of Locked On Sports Today. You get discount on merchandise and other perks as well. Tap the link in the show notes to learn more and join the Locked On Everydayer Club. Once the second segment sip has been put down, we can get to, what is it? Yes, the second segment. So, Brandon Smith, know the name. Know the name. This is a guy who will have an opportunity to play in his first year of college football, but a late flip in the class of 2026. Now, remember, in my perfect world, this would be a much more common occurrence in which guys are flipping or committing or officially signing after the season. You'd put National Signing Day, which I think still technically exists, back in February, and you would make it actually a big deal. That would be a better world for the college football calendar, so you don't have to work out recruiting classes and the transfer portal as well while the season is still ongoing. Does make sense. Hopefully those changes arise. I'm not particularly optimistic. I am optimistic, though, about Brandon Smith, 6 foot, 185 pounds from Central East High School in Fresno, California. He's a 4-star composite in the 24/7 rankings, number 337 overall player, and the number 21 running back. He had been committed to Brent Brennan and the Arizona Wildcats. He signed on December 3rd, 2025, decommitted on January 17th, and has announced he'll flip to the Ducks and will be a part of the 2026 recruiting class. Now, that does bump Oregon's 2026 class up to being the number 2 class in the country nationally, according to 24/7. That does, however, include Bryson Beaver. So for those of you that care about the actual finish, Oregon's not going to waver out of being a top 5 class. I can't see that happening in the next several weeks, month or so. But I think that Smith makes a lot of sense for what Oregon's running back room is currently slated to be going into next year. So he's actually a two-way player. Greg Biggins of 24/7 Sports had the following scout on him on the website. Quote, Smith is one of the region's best two-way athletes, but long-term running back looks to be the meal ticket for him. Was productive on both sides of the ball the last 2 seasons. His safety highlight reel is pretty impressive, starring at running back and safety. A true game breaker and home run threat running with the football, and is among the most explosive backs out west. Elite track metrics and competed in 5 events last spring with a personal best 10.67 100 meters. That is pretty darn good. 21.52 in the 200 meters, and anchored the school's 4x400 relay team that finished second at California State Track and Field Championship. Speed shows up on the football field, and he's able to accelerate and hit his top-end gear after just a few strides, end quote. He's also a capable pass catcher as well, and he becomes the second running back commit for the Ducks in the 2026 class. And the reason I say this makes a lot of sense is because of the portal exodus of running backs that Oregon's had, depth at this position is actually kind of lacking. And as we saw this past year, true freshmen seeing the field at the running back position, not just possible, but can be a big part of what you do on that side of the ball. Because this is a running back room that loses Noah Whittington to eligibility, who just quietly worked hard and had one of the best 4-year careers, but longest, but also short. It can't believe it's over, but also can't believe how long it was. He just had a great 4-year career. He's out of eligibility. Mekhi Hughes, he transferred to Houston, where I'd suspect he will start. Jaden Lamar transferred to Washington. I don't think that he is going to start. And I'm sure plenty of Oregon fans will remember that when Washington returns to Autzen Stadium later this year in the fall. And Jay Harris transferred to Kansas State. Then you look around and kind of feel like that Will Smith gif from the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Like, where is everybody? Where'd they go? How many guys you got? Well, this actually puts Oregon into a solid spot. With Tre'Davious Ball, that makes 5 scholarship running backs. 2 of them are true freshmen, but I think there are going to be several offseason conversations on this very show about what that running back depth chart is going to look like. Because, of course, you have Jordan Davison and you have De'Aaron Hill, and Dink Riggs is still around. Only guy that wasn't a huge part of the room last year that decided to stick around. Maybe this is why. Maybe he sees this as an opportunity to see the field. I don't know that there's anything except for maybe blocking that Jalen Lamar can do that Dink Riggs can't do on a football field. So then you bring in 2 guys that are known for the home run hitting ability, and you in both Smith and Tre'Davious Ball, who has some of my favorite highlight tape of any player, regardless of position, in the 2026 class. By the way, 6 foot, 185 pounds, actually a little bit lighter, but 1 inch taller than what De'Aaron Hill was, who came in at 5'11", 205 pounds. And, you know, the type of scouting report that both of these guys generated is very similar. Talk about the high-end speed, talk about the explosion. You're not mentioning physicality. It's all about the big plays. It's all about making the flash. And De'Aaron Hill, of course, was awesome this year. And I'm sure he'll be great again next season. As we saw this year, though, you never know how many running backs you're going to need. I think the biggest takeaway, frankly, from this edition that we should all be wondering is, hey, Brandon, how capable are you in pass protection 1 year from now? Because, boy, I tell you, you never know what can happen to a running back room and who can become available. It's actually insane that it's 2 years in a row Oregon's top running back has either been limited or hasn't played in the biggest game, or in the last game of the year. Jordan James got knocked out in the first half of the Rose Bowl. Davison didn't play, and then Noah Whittington got turf toe. So there is no such thing as having too much depth, or there's too many guys, too many mouths to feed. You just don't know how it is going to all shake out. So, yeah, when I saw this particular piece of news, my first thought was, wow, they picked somebody up. And then I thought about it and went, wait a minute. How did I miss that? When I was laying out transfer portal needs throughout the week on the show, how did I overlook the fact that Oregon was before they flipped Smith from Arizona, they were slated to go into the season with 4 scholarship running backs, which based on this year is not enough, which is wild, but you never know when that situation could come around once again. So, yeah, I like to pick up the potential to play on special teams, at least as a true freshman, I think is very real, given his experience at safety. I don't think with Oregon's defensive backfield, both what they have coming back, what's in the 2026 recruiting class, guys from the 25 cycle that, you know, like Trey McNutt, Dorian Brew, that didn't see the field because of injury this year, that could play a role next season. Coy Parrish coming over from Minnesota, of course. I don't think there's a real path to playing time there. But number 3 running back position, wide open. There for the taking. Brandon Smith could be a guy that goes and gets it. We'll just have to wait and see. There's mathematically a 67% chance, I'm rounding up there just a little though, 67% chance that Oregon's once again heavily featuring a true freshman in the running back fold. And I'm okay with it. Rashad Samples doing a really good job. Really good job. So, how about the transfers that don't garner the same headlines, but are, of course, worthy of noting anyway? And trivia is back because it's Tuesday. So, few guys that I believe are all preferred walk-ons. I'm not sure about Blow Dantzler, who Blue or Blow. I'm actually not sure about that pronunciation. It's Bleu. I think that's kind of like, blue cheese, maybe. Anyway, we'll just go with Dantzler. So Dantzler, 6'2", 240 pounds, was a 3-star linebacker in the class of 2025. Spent 1 season at Oregon State. Only appeared in 4 games. Redshirted. Comes over to the Ducks. Now, Kamar Mathuti went with Tosh Lupoi down to Cal, so they lost a body from the room. And Dantzler is, at the very least, a positional replacement for that. I don't think he's someone that comes in and if he wasn't playing a big role at Oregon State, I can't sit here and put the expectation on him that he's going to come in and have some sort of role in a linebacker room that sneakily is pretty darn good. I don't think it's one of the best in all of college football. I don't think it's the best unit that Oregon has. You got Jerry Mixon in the room. You've got Devin Jackson in the room. I think, presuming that they're healthy, one of Braden Platt or Dylan Williams has a breakout campaign in 2026. But Dantzler's just kind of a depth piece there. There's also defensive back Arlo Henderson Jr., who transferred from Mississippi Valley State, which is an HBCU that competes in the SWAC. He had 11 tackles in 2025. He's 5'10", 184 pounds, logged 175 snaps with a PFF grade of 45.9. So not exactly a flagship sort of season. I think there's an element. The other guy is a 2026 defensive lineman, Tavita Paongo, who I saw is going to be a preferred walk-on as well. I would be surprised if any of these guys make an impact. Frankly, I think Dantzler is the guy that has the highest likelihood of seeing the field in any meaningful way. But I think these are names to know because obviously they're new to Oregon's roster. But I also think that from a special team standpoint, you could see it, or a slight role playing. That was an interesting phraseology. They could have a slight role to play on the team in some capacity. Henderson, though, unless they really see something that, Mississippi Valley State wasn't able to get out of him, and I have a pretty high level of confidence that Chris Hampton and the Oregon staff is better than, any school that's competing at a lower level of competition right now, at least for the most part. I think these are just guys that are kind of filling out roster slots, quite frankly. Practice players, scout team, maybe special teams, but I just don't see how somebody that, even though he played this past year, only logged 175 snaps, wasn't a huge part of Mississippi Valley State's roster. I don't know how he's walking into Oregon's defensive back room. And even though Oregon lost a bunch of guys from there, there's still a bunch of major talent and a lot of guys to like. So, yeah, just guys to note, but nobody that I have major expectations of or that I'm going to, gaslight you into thinking, oh, man, this is the hidden gem of the 2026 talent acquisition cycle. No, we'll just see. One of these guys could have a big spring game, and we could reassess at that time. I think we're about 3 months away from that, by the way. But yeah, no major expectations there. Dantzler, because of his position, losing Bryce Betcher, losing Kamar Mathuti, nobody else came in. I think just from a numbers standpoint, he'd have the highest likelihood of seeing snaps. But again, I go back to if he wasn't playing a whole lot at Oregon State, maybe there was another factor. Obviously, he's got the size for it, 6'2", 240, but yeah, could be a developmental project, honestly. 3-star in the class of 2025, so he's got plenty of he's got 4 years of eligibility left. So names to keep an eye on there. Okay, let's wrap up today's show with a little bit of trivia. Good one here. I get a lot of good submissions for these, and I pick the best. Now that we're in the off season, I can do this more often. Why don't we'll ratchet this up to twice a week. So if you have a good trivia clue, send it to me. We'll call it Tuesday, Thursday trivia, since those days start with T. Here's today's. What is Oregon's record for scoring at least 30 points in consecutive games, and in which 2 seasons did it occur? Which 2 seasons? So I went right back to the Chip Kelly era off the bat and was initially thinking about whether there could have been a crossover to this streak. But Oregon did not score 30 points in Chip Kelly's final game of his first year in the Rose Bowl against Ohio State, nor did they do so in his final game of his second year or his first game of his second year against Auburn and LSU. 2011. 2011's offense comes to mind. 2010's offense definitely comes to mind. I can't get off of that era. But 2014 with Mariota, this is going to be educated guess territory. So I'm going to say, how would the 2010 season have started? They scored like 70 against New Mexico, 42 against Tennessee. Then who did they play? I think it was a state school. They played Nicholls State that year in 2010? They might have. So that would have been 3 in a row off the bat in 2010. But then you had the Cal game in the middle of the season, so it couldn't have been that long. So I'm going to say 8 games. I'm going to say 8 games for my guess. And I'm going to go 2011 and 2014. Final answer, lock it in. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.